right. So, Dr. Babs, welcome to Permission to Speak about Perimenopause. Sorry, let's do that again. Okay, let me get the giggles out. I'm a giggler, but this is a serious topic, so I wanted to make this particular platform very serious and just, take my time. Okay.
Yeah.
Welcome back to another episode of Permission to Speak about Perimenopause. I am extremely excited about today's episode because I am interviewing a doctor. And not just any doctor, my doctor. What we will do in today's episode is address a lot of questions that women have when it comes to perimenopause. So without further ado, I will read the accolades of our amazing guest today because I don't want to get anything wrong. So today's guest is Dr. Dolapo Babalola, affectionately known as Dr. Babs. She is a triple board certified physician in family medicine, lifestyle medicine, and obesity medicine. She also specializes in menopause and is the founder of Living Your Finest Wellness, a direct primary care practice focused on helping patients achieve better health through personalized, whole person care. She is also an educator, speaker, and passionate advocate for helping women better understand their bodies and navigate midlife with confidence. So, Dr. Babs, welcome to Permission to Speak about Perimenopause. I am so happy to have you. But before we dive into perimenopause, I would love to know why or what made you leave traditional medicine to start your own practice?
Well, let me first and foremost say that it's such an honor for me to be in your wonderful space. I love the work that you do. You're such an amazing lady, and I love that you're doing this. You are advocating for yourself, but also women around you.
Absolutely.
So why did I leave traditional healthcare system? For several reasons. As much as I loved it, I was a medical director for students. I also did some research, doing a lot of clinical medicine. I was just stressed with how much time we were given to care for our patients. And I've always been passionate about whole person care. So 7 minutes, 10 minutes wasn't cutting it, right? So as much as I loved the people I worked with and my patients, it was just so overwhelming. There wasn't valued-based care provided. And then, of course, it was burnout on my end, right? I would have to see 26 patients. And because I was
Wait, 26
in a day.
patients?
Yes, in a day.
Wow.
On the days that I was working, seeing patients. And I couldn't, and because of the habits that I had developed, which were good habits where I had to stay in line and focus with my patient, I wasn't writing my notes. So by the time I'm done with 26 patients, then I have all these charts to complete, all these things that had nothing to do with the patient, documentation, and then that was eaten into my own personal life. I wouldn't get home on time, or I get home and I'm still charting. And I was like, this is not sustainable. So I learned about the direct primary care model, which is membership based, where we focus on patient quality and the care that they get over the number of patients seen. So that's it in a nutshell.
And as one of your patients, I can attest to the fact that I feel extremely comfortable when I'm with you. I don't feel rushed, which was what I felt when I was under the big traditional form of medication or seeing a doctor. It always felt rushed. It felt very, it felt like they were reading a chart about me to kind of, oh, how are you doing as I'm reading it? And it was so obvious to me. But whenever I'm with you, when I bring my daughter, you're patient with us. We take our time. I never feel rushed. You go over everything. There's been so many things with my body that I've been worried about, and I've been able to have those conversations with you, and you break it down in such a simple way where it doesn't feel overwhelming. It doesn't feel like I have to start going to ChatGPT to just break everything down and to understand what exactly is going on with my body. So thank you for that. I know you're a busy woman because you have patients and everything to see. So I'm going to jump right into the questions. And my first question is, what exactly is perimenopause and how is it different from menopause?
Oh, yes. Great question. So let me backtrack and start with what pre-menopause. So we have pre, we have peri.
Oh,
and
wow.
Post-menopause.
Really?
So pre just means before that whole transition. So menopause as its own is just really a transition.
Okay.
It's a transition from puberty, which is the pre, right? Puberty, when we in our teen age, you're going through puberty, your hormones are high, all of that is happening. That's pre. Peri is around the age where you're getting closer to menopause. So we are born, even before we are born, actually, we have about 6 to 7 million eggs.
Wow.
By the time we're actually born, it cuts down to about 1 to 2 million. Now, by the time we're 30, all the way into our 40s, eggs are just reducing in number. So really that whole menopause journey is just ovarian follicles beginning to deplete. When you're in puberty age, your hormones are high. When you're in menopause, it's dropping down because we are born with all the eggs that we ever need. Compared to men continuously produce sperm. For women, when we're born, we have all the eggs that we possibly will need, but then they depreciate as we get older. By 40, that same number that I said in the millions, you're actually hitting about 25,000. And then by the time you get to menopause, barely 1,000 eggs left. And now these eggs are responsible for all the hormones. So when we say perimenopause, it's around the time where your eggs are fluctuating. They're going out the door. It could be too high, it could be too low. And that's usually between the age of 45 and 55, with the average age of reaching menopause, meaning no more cycles, 12 months, no more period. That is when you become post-menopause. So that menopause is actually just one day. The moment you hit that 12 months, you haven't had a cycle, then you become post-menopause. So it's just a one day, and anything after that is what we call the menopause that you hear everybody talking about. So pre, in the puberty age, peri is around that time when the eggs are just really taking a nosedive, and then post-menopause is no more eggs, no more hormones that your eggs are producing.
So is it possible to have those symptoms outside of that 45 bracket?
Yes,
because I've
absolutely.
spoken to women in their 30s who sound like they're experiencing some of the symptoms I'm experiencing at 47.
Yes, absolutely. So I said that peri age went around that transition. We call it the transition period. And there are two phases to that. So between 45 and 55. But saying that that's the range, all the journey begins as early as 7 to 10 years earlier. Wow. So yes, my youngest patient is actually 32. So yes, being empowered. That's why I love what you're doing, because when we're empowered and we're aware of what's to come, then we're not taken by surprise. We're not feeling like we're crazy and things are happening. But yes, absolutely. As I shared the numbers, the story of the eggs, by the time you're in your 30s, you're close to about 25,000. And then by the time you hit your 40, you're about, the numbers just decline and decrease. And if you don't have the eggs that are producing the estrogen and progesterone, the body is made up of over 450 receptors that are responding to estrogen. If you don't have that estrogen anymore, the powerhouse for women, you're going to have all those symptoms that we're going to be talking about shortly. So yeah, those symptoms begin as early as 7 to 10 years within that window.
Wow. Okay. Let's go to the second question. I have so many follow-up questions for that, but I'm like, okay, in order to be on time, let's continue. Okay, so at what age should women start paying attention to the signs of perimenopause?
Yes. So same thing. You mentioned about a friend in the early 30s. Yeah, you want to really start in your 30s completely. Because if you're waiting, a lot of people think, and I thought the same thing too, even as a doctor, because we were not trained in medical school. So, and there was a reason, because they took that whole curriculum out.
I'm going to have to bring you back to have a conversation about that
whole journey and what happened.
That alone is a major conversation.
Oh, yes.
And part of the reason why I believe there's so much negative discourse and why the older generation dismisses it. So we'll have that for another conversation. But sorry.
So going back to just why, the whole journey, we were not taught in medical school. As a doctor, I had no idea. I just thought, it's in my 50s, 55. I'm not there yet. And somewhere in my early 40s, I was like, what is going on? Joint aches, brain fog. I was like, what was
Wow.
going on? So when do we need to start having this conversation? In your 30s, because you've lost almost more than half of your eggs anyway, and there's all that roller coaster ride happening, and then you're wondering, okay, is it my thyroid? Is it, what is going on? Am I crazy? Do I have depression? But all the time, it could just be just the same hormonal shift. So I always encourage everyone in your 30s, start having this conversation. If your doctors are not bringing it up, bring it up, right? So yesterday I had a patient, 55. She came with her daughter. Her daughter is 32. She said she's already having that conversation with her because she's gained so much weight, so many things that she now knows she doesn't want the same thing to happen to her 32-year-old daughter. So as early as in our 30s, it doesn't hurt to understand what your body is going to go through. Because as long as we're living, we're going to go through it. As long as you're a female, you are going to go through menopause. And there are different types of menopause. There's the surgical menopause where you take, the uterus is taken out, the ovary. So bam.
Getting ready to do that.
Bam. You just don't have any estrogen. So it's not that gradual fluctuation. You just, but for the rest of us that don't have the hysterectomy, it's just going to gradually, decline. And then all the symptoms, it's just really trying to figure its way around.
I love that you brought that up because I did have someone leave a comment on one of my posts that, she's just tired of seeing this conversation about perimenopause. She's not there and she doesn't want to know about it. Ooh, okay. So my response was, you might not be there and you might not want to know about it, but when you get there, because you will, luckily for you, there are outlets that talk about it. So you will know that you are not losing your mind. And this is something that other women are experiencing.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes. Okay, so the next question. Women shared symptoms ranging from hot flashes, brain fog, joint pains, frozen shoulder, hair loss, itchy ears, anxiety, waking up between the holy hours of 3 a.m. and 4 a.m., and even a vibrating vagina. So which of these are legit symptoms you would see in your practice?
Yeah, right. So all the symptoms are legit. All of them, plus more.
Even the vibrating vagina?
Even the vibrating vagina. Yes, ma'am. They are all legitimate. And that's why women need to be listened to, not ignored. Listen, because we know our bodies better than anyone, right? You know when something is off.
Yes.
You know when something is off. I had to tell my husband, I was like, and I've always been that strong type A woman. I have 3 kids. I always kept everyone's schedule on point. Now I warn them. I'm like, you're relying on me to keep all your schedule. We have gone to places and it was a different location because they were all recounting on my memory. Oh. Yeah, things are better now. I'm glad because now I know what's going on and I know how to prepare myself. But then I had to tell my husband, I'm like, I am really worried about my brain. I am worried about this brain fog, So all these symptoms, and there's a reason behind it. If we understand, I'm always data driven and backed by science. Estrogen is the powerhouse for women. That estrogen by itself, boy, oh boy, 450 receptors starting from the brain all the way. It touches every single thing. It's an anti-inflammatory, that estrogen by itself. It helps with collagen protection, everything. Just name it. It's a lubricant. So this estrogen that we always used to I didn't like my period, I don't, whatever, it's there.
Wait, I'm sorry. So we should be grateful for our period?
Estrogen, yes. Wow. Because it's produced by the ovaries. Yeah, we should. And now I actually have a love for it because then, my periods were never really heavy, but it was a nuisance when it came, But now I'm like, now that it's going out the door, I think that's why we need to empower ourselves and understand where we are now and know how to balance that decrease in estrogen. So back to the estrogen, it controls so many things in the body, right? It lubricates our skin, collagen, brain health, even heart. That's why for women, heart disease is the number 1 killer in men and in women. But women, it only happens after that menopause journey. And the reason is because the estrogen actually protects the heart for women. So men start their heart disease in the early 40s, and then women after we don't have enough estrogen, because estrogen dilates the heart. It dilates the vessels. And in the absence, then you have all the constriction. So there's a reason for all these symptoms that you listed. The brain doesn't utilize glucose as well as it used to, and estrogen helps with that. People gain weight because insulin resistance. And so there's so many, and even the joints. My biggest thing was the brain fog joint. I felt like I was an old woman. I couldn't get up, and that was because my hips were inflamed, joints, all of that was going on.
That was one of the symptoms I brought to you when I first of all started seeing you. And since I've been on HRT,
yes,
I don't have my joint pains anymore.
Yes, absolutely. And HRT is definitely, it protects your joints, and there's acute treatment and there's long-term treatment. So the HRT not only helps with your joints, but it also prevents osteoporosis, which is thinning of the bone, right? It also helps with the brain health, with the heart health. So it helps with even, some women complain, and that was one of my issues. I just had vagina dryness. It was painful. I was like, what is going on? I've never had UTIs, urinary tract infection before. And all of a sudden I had my first UTI. I was like, what is going on? I was burning. And that's because estrogen lubricates the vagina, the vulva, right? It needs that. And in its absence, it's very thin. So intimacy becomes painful. That's also another concern that women don't feel. We don't talk about these things, and sometimes in the healthcare system, it's just 7 minutes. The doctor doesn't bring it up, you don't bring it up, and then patients are suffering in silence. So
I've also heard that can lead to, so the UTIs can also lead to death in many women at that age.
Yes, urosepsis. So it's very important that we are aware. I've had a lady itching in her ears so bad that she had to take time off from work because she had a professional role. She's having a meeting and she's hearing tinnitus. It was just ringing and itchy, and it was so embarrassing as a female leader. But it was, of course, we rule out other reasons.
Yes.
But if you rule all those out and you have nothing left except that you're in that perimenopause journey, then you attribute it to, let's see what happens when we put you on HRT, or let's see what else needs to be done.
That's excellent. Yeah. How can women tell the difference between perimenopause, stress, burnout, aging, or another medical condition? I know you just said that, we do all the other tests, but what happens when you do all the other tests and your doctor dismisses you?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I've heard it too, just the same thing that you said, someone mentioned on your page that, menopause, everything is menopause. My hairdresser, she always says, anytime she's talking to me, I'm like, peri-brain. She's like, now we're going to blame everything on But the point though is there's several things that can present itself as hormonal dysregulation, right? So rightfully so, the thyroid could be one. They present similarly, right?
Yes.
There's the cold or heat intolerance, there's the mood swing, and there's also vitamin D deficiency. So there's several things. There's iron deficiency can also present the same way. So that is why for me, it's very important, whole person care. You don't treat somebody and let's run after one symptom. And then if that's not it, then let's go into another symptom. You treat the whole person. You take a deep dive into their history, because you can't do that in 7 minutes or 10 minutes, right? So having that conversation, when did it start? How did it start? All those questions, so that you can rule out if it's a thyroid, if it's a vitamin deficiency. And it could be multiple things, right? It could be perimenopause at the same time, a vitamin D deficiency. So yes.
Wait, so you mean both. There's possibility for the double whammy?
Yes,
as if one isn't bad enough.
As if one isn't bad enough.
Wow.
But having said that too, hormonal dysfunction can also lead to some of those other things. Like I have patients that maybe they've suffered with depression in the past when they're younger age, but it flares up now during perimenopause, because again, if you remember, I said estrogen is responsible for mood, is responsible for brain health, is responsible for all the things. So it could flare up then. Patients that have done really well eat the same way, and all of a sudden, the same thing you've eaten and you haven't changed anything, you're gaining weight. So the important thing is to answer your question, which is a great question. We're not going to attribute everything to menopause and perimenopause, but we know that every woman is going to go through it, and we all manifest differently.
Yes.
Not everyone is going to have the same symptoms. I would have maybe 1 or 2 hot flashes, but that was all I was taught. Hot flashes was the big thing. I didn't know about all the other things that I experienced until I went through my own training and my own journey. So importantly, women need to understand that they need a doctor that is going to sit with them and get to the root cause and not make an assumption that, oh, age. And there's no such thing as age. Please, we're supposed to age gracefully.
I agree.
No, when I have patients telling me that they're just old, I'm like, no. Because, I'm always talking about lifestyle. So let's incorporate lifestyle. We definitely have to fine tune a few things, but age by itself should not give us a pass to just say, oh, well, it's just part of the, territory, because there are certainly treatment options, lifestyle, optimizing your sleep, stress management, but then what else is in the toolkit that you can actually use as well? So
perfect. That's good.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So the next question, can blood work diagnose perimenopause, or is that one of the biggest misconceptions?
Yeah. So when it comes to blood work, it's the same thing like puberty, right? If you remember that when we were in our, was it 13, when our periods started, nobody did blood work on us, right? That was because it fluctuated. So for puberty, your hormones are increasing, and then that's why you get all the changes, the breast development, all the things that happen. So in perimenopause, because it's around that time where sometimes it's up, sometimes it's down, sometimes it's up, it really is not a good picture of where you are. Now, I do use labs, but for a specific reason, right? If there are women that are on an IUD and that don't have their cycles, so they don't really know where they are, right? They just have symptoms. So it has to be patient specific. So blood work, no, you can't use it solely to diagnose perimenopause. Now, post-menopause, we already know no more cycle, no more bleeding. Numbers are supposed to be absolutely flat, right? So that is a given. There's no eggs anymore producing hormones. So everything's going to be flat. But in the perimenopause, one day you could be up, the next day you could be down. So if we do draw the blood, it's for specific reasons. If, there's complaint of loss of libido, then we can check testosterone to see where you are. And if you do, in my practice, if I am checking hormones, I'm checking on specific times of the month if you're cycling, because that we can at least, we're certain about the luteal phase. The luteal phase is after you've ovulated. There's an expectation for the progesterone to be high. So if I'm doing blood work, it's usually either on day 3 of the cycle or day 19 to 21. So answer the question, no, blood cannot define, but we can use it to give us some assessment. But the patient in front of you is the most important, the symptoms they're experiencing. We have to listen to those symptoms and come up with a definitive diagnosis. Now with menopause though, if you haven't had your cycle in 12 months, that is clearly a definition of post-menopause.
Quick question, can it come back even after 12 months?
Yeah, it can.
The period
for several reasons.
Oh, wow.
So when people they're no longer cycling, if it does come back though, it does need to be investigated. Except if they're on hormone replacement therapy. Because when you're on hormone replacement therapy, the uterus is like, and I brought some models here to show. So we have this beautiful uterus, right here. So when patients are on hormone replacement therapy, which again is what we naturally make. So when people are talking about HRTs and they're worried and troubled about it, is what we naturally make. So it's bioidentical, right? So, but for a woman that stops seeing her cycle post-menopause and she's on HRT because she wants to help with brain fog or joint issues in addition to lifestyle, what happens is that this uterus, this is the inner lining of the uterus, as you can see.
Yes.
The uterus
so
is
for the people just listening on Spotify, is there a way to describe what
I'm happy to describe it. So the uterus, right, there's a lining in the uterus, and so that's the area that gets thickened in preparation for a baby. All right? So anytime, the first day of our cycle, day 1, by the time you get to day 14, there's the egg that has developed. And by the time it drops during ovulation, prior to that time, it's preparing. It's like Thanksgiving. You're having guests come over. You buy groceries and all of that. That's what happens to the uterus. It prepares the lining. So it thickens. Now, after ovulation, though, if the eggs drop but it's not fertilized, that's the one that we call the tears. The tears, the progesterone. So it begins to shed. Now, for people that bleed afterwards, it could be for several reasons, but it needs to be investigated if it's continuous, if they're not on HRT. So not to make it complicated, the uterus just pretty much builds and breaks down. But after menopause, no more eggs. There's no ovary anyway building and letting down. So if there was any bleeding, then we need to find out why that bleeding was taking place. Yeah.
All right. Okay. So, why do so many women feel dismissed when they bring up these symptoms or their symptoms in general?
Yeah. Traditionally, women are always dismissed. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the research. Men, hell, they get all the research. I mean, we have a male testosterone, and women have been struggling for years, and we still don't have an FDA approved testosterone. So we have to use the male version. I know, I laugh.
I know, we're both laughing. You remember I told you what happened to me.
I know. And you see, that's why they're fighting. Oh, bless the hearts of all my colleagues in the,
Wait, let me just tell everybody real quick what happened to me, because I'm sure everyone's wondering what happened to me.
Yeah.
I used, against Dr. Bab's instructions, I used too much testosterone, and I literally turned into the Incredible Hulk. I freaked out on my kids. I had to apologize to my whole household the next day. But it was so hard because I found myself enraged in an unnatural anger. And I'm crying because I couldn't stop. And I'm yelling at my kids to a point where they were afraid.
Yeah.
So, and I've had people message me about this. Not necessarily with testosterone, but just experiencing that kind of rage.
Yeah.
And I couldn't picture or even fathom how bad it could be.
Yeah.
So I also have a newfound respect for men, because if this is what they go through when they have extra testosterone, it is a scary place to be in, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes. And just to allude to what you said, that's why we need to have our own FDA approved for women, right? Because right now we're using it off label for women. If libido is low, if there's fatigue. But again, you want to always make sure that you use it as prescribed, right? But again, with the testosterone, we just need to make sure, as prescribed, depending on where you are, it's really supposed to be 1/10 of this.
Okay.
Because we make 1/10 of what men make, right? So it's, this tube is actually supposed to last 7 to 10 days.
Okay.
So yeah, so those are all the things that we need to take into consideration. Make sure that your doctors are listening. They're hearing you, right? If one person is not listening, then find another doctor. You got to make sure that you're heard and listened to. And it's not a one size fit all. I have different treatments here. Now, we're talking about hormones, HRTs, but there are non-hormonal options as well, okay? And if a doctor that you see is only prescribing just one method, like this is a patch, estradiol patch, which I use as well.
I use as well.
And has really helped. This is a patch. It's very small, right? And I'm going to rip this one. This is for my Sunday changeover. But yeah, so this is what it looks like, really small. But it releases low dose of estrogen to balance your body's deficiency anyway, right? Coupled with all the other things, lifestyle that you need to do. So if a doctor is just telling you need to just do pellets, because some women do like testosterone pellets, and unfortunately it just gives them a high level of testosterone, which could give them that boost of energy, but in the long term, it's not. Safety is always first. And if you're feeling rage and you're having all those anger, it's not helpful for you or the people around you. So these are all the different options that are available for treatment. And then the progesterone that helps with sleep and rest.
My favorite.
Yeah. So again, it's not a one size fit. Just make sure, generally speaking, our symptoms are dismissed as women, but doctors now are trained. We know there's a mandate out there that the information needs to be put back in medical school curriculum, residency curriculum, so that everybody knows how to treat every woman. And don't wait till they bring it up, right? We need to ask the questions. And so times have changed now. We're in a different season and era where we demand to get more care and help from our doctors.
I agree on that, because I recently had a conversation with my older sister who, when she was going through perimenopause, thought she was losing her mind.
Yeah.
And she recently said that her doctor said, well, now that you're in menopause, you're fine. You've dealt with it this long. So even that alone.
So continue dealing with it.
Exactly. Just continue dealing with it. And I said, why? We're not on this sufferhead journey, nor do we need to be. No. I was also with a lot of older women over a couple of weeks ago, and everybody just kind of dismissed it like, like a badge of honor. But that's not the honor I want. She felt that the doctor just almost dismissed the fact that she's still exhibiting symptoms. She's never been on HRT. Yeah. So she decided that she's going to leave that doctor and look for a doctor who actually is going to listen and not accept that, just deal with it, has a solution. Yeah. So that brings me to my next question. How can women advocate for themselves if they know something isn't right, but are told everything looks normal? Right. And I've actually had that conversation with quite a few women where they said, well, my doctor said everything looks normal. I'm not there yet, but I'm exhibiting all the symptoms I've heard other women talk about.
Right. So the first and foremost thing I always tell all my patients is be a student of your own body. Really, be a student of your own body. Nobody's going to know you better than anyone, even the doctors. If you have doctors that dismiss you, then you need to find another doctor. And you can find doctors in the Menopause Society in different states and countries that have actually been trained and know the nuance. And it's not just going to go based on how many years ago research. Just yesterday, I had a patient that was struggling. Her quality of life was so deranged that she said her cardiologist told her that, oh, you're okay. You don't need this. And I told her, I said, if you don't need it, but yet we carried estrogen in our bodies all this while, how it so you're going to be anxious, you can't sleep, and your cardiologist told you that. So definitely you want to make sure that you're a student of your own body. Do the research. I send research papers to all my patients. I want them to understand what the options are and what the new research shows. So that's first and foremost, know your body. You also want to track your symptoms, right? I'm guilty, I must say. I never tracked my cycle. I don't know if I envy people, but the women that have a calendar and an app, I wasn't one of those.
I'm not either. Okay. No.
I never kept an app.
My husband knows when it's coming.
Oh, he knows when it's coming. Okay, I totally, neither myself or my husband, it just shows up and I'm like, okay, it's out the door. But since I've been in that perimenopause journey, I know when it shows up and when it disappears for a while and when it comes back again. So I definitely encourage women, please know when your cycle, know what time of your cycle you feel rage. When do you feel really dry? When do you feel brain fog? Because it's telling you a story. And unless you pay attention to that, you really wouldn't know where and what to tell your doctor. Because if you just go blindly, because you already have a short time if you're in the traditional healthcare system, right? So you really need to pinpoint exactly when you're feeling these symptoms, how long it started, when around your cycle, because there are two phases of that perimenopause that I would love to share. The first stage is where your cycles might be really close, like 20, 25, 26 days. Some people might see their periods twice. And that's the first phase of that whole perimenopause journey. And that's because the progesterone, and that happened to me. I was having anxiety. The progesterone that my body naturally makes was going out the door because my eggs were not producing as much. And it's the eggs that give you the progesterone, right? So progesterone is the Xanax of life. I was having anxiety, just all of a sudden chest pain, not sleeping well. Wow. So that's the first phase. The second phase of that whole journey is what we call the late phase, the estrogen. So that means, if you recall, I shared about the estrogen building the uterus. Yes. So when the estrogen is no longer there or it's spaced out, you won't see your period for close to maybe 4 months, 5 months, and then it shows up again. So that phase is where all the other, like the hot flashes, the brain fog. So it's a series of things that happen. So paying attention to where you are in your cycle or in that journey is very helpful.
So can HRT avoid those big gaps and make it more steady?
Yes, and that's the whole role. Yes, and I like that you asked that question because a lot of women feel that, but I'm still seeing my cycle. It's regular. Why do I need HRT? Because it's a roller coaster ride. It helps to balance things. So you don't have to wait to when you don't see your cycle before you start HRT, because the whole idea of HRT is really to help minimize those symptoms, the clash, the highs. When it's high, it's high. When it's low, it's low. So the HRT helps to normalize them. So your eggs are still doing its thing, right? But you're leveling out all that shift that happens that affects the quality of life. I've had patients, hot flashes, they can't stay at work, or I don't know if you know this data about women just quitting jobs or retiring early because they can't keep up. Hot flashes, brain fog in the middle of a presentation, that is affecting their quality of life, and they don't need to suffer that way. With the HRT leveling out their levels, then they're able to live life again and feel like themselves. So, yeah.
So this is probably not even one of the questions that I have, but
yes, of course.
I can't help but ask this as a fashion person and someone who's in front of the camera.
Yes.
So does this mean that HRT allows you to age more gracefully since your body's not breaking down suddenly?
Yeah. HRTs have numerous benefits. Again, it's the estrogen, the powerhouse, right, which is responsible for 450 functions in the body, and then the progesterone and the testosterone. So HRTs, even though off-label, it won't say that it makes you age backwards, but because it's keeping...
I'm like, darling, the skin, everything. I'm like, keep me on it.
Estrogen, I don't know if you've seen, like, some people rub estrogen cream, and this is the estrogen cream for burning in the vagina area that is a good moisturizer. Some people, it has collagen, it has all the things.
Oh, so it tightens up
some people actually rub it, but there's estradiol that actually helps to tighten up the skin. So yes, it plays all those roles because of what it does. Yes.
And so some people are saying we shouldn't do this.
Oh no, people are doing it. You guys follow social. Back in the day. Oh no. Well, that's because of what they knew, right? Because of the study, there was a fear for estrogen. They thought estrogen caused cancer. But let me explain something very quickly. Eating a strawberry gummy is different from strawberry. Do you agree?
Absolutely.
Okay. And that was the research. They were comparing synthetic estrogen to the natural estrogen. So they're two different things. So that study caused a lot of problems. And of course, rightfully so, everyone's afraid of breast cancer. But now that they've reviewed back that study, they've debunked it, they've taken off the black box label. So that was really what happened. So estradiol is exactly what we make. And some people actually rub it in their face, collagen. But if they're not using this one, they have different versions of the natural one that you can use. So yes, it definitely, if you're feeling in a better mood and feel like yourself again, of course you're going to glow. You're going to feel happy and joyful. So
that is me.
That is you. And me too. Me. I agree completely.
Yes. Well, your skin is glowing. You look absolutely
fabulous.
Thank you. Okay, so my next question is, what's the biggest myth about perimenopause that you wish women would stop believing?
Yeah, there's so many. But one is, please do not suffer in silence. Oh my gosh. I just remembered when I was struggling getting out of bed. That wasn't fun.
Yeah.
And I usually run. I've done a marathon. I've done all those things. But the irony was that when I was hurting a few years back, I wasn't doing any of those things because I just opened up my practice. So I really, as much as I love to run and do all the adventurous things, I wasn't doing it. So I couldn't blame that. I was just like, why am I feeling weak now? I know that, there's some anti-inflammatory foods that we need to avoid because that could worsen joint issues. And I wasn't doing that. I had changed my eating habits. I was eating cleaner. So I couldn't understand why. And I did go to my own primary care doctor, and they were actually ordering an MRI because it was that troublesome. It was but then, in the midst of all of that, I started learning about perimenopause. I don't even remember how it fell in my lap. And I was like, could this be the issue? Because there's what is called musculoskeletal syndrome of menopause. And that was what was going on. I had my thumb, my elbow, my hip. So please don't suffer in silence. Seek help. Seek help, seek help, seek help. And don't wait till when you're in your 50s, because for especially Black women and all of us, the different races have some symptoms that are more pronounced. But Black women generally, not only do we have our symptoms longer, but it's intense.
What?
I'm sorry. I'm afraid to be bearer of bad news, but that's just the truth. But again, everybody's different, so we don't all have to experience it the same way.
Okay.
But I just want to plead with women, don't put it as a badge of honor that you just cope. Our mothers, they suffered through it. They were fine. I had to ask my mom. She's 76. I had to ask her. I said, how did you experience it? And she actually, in retrospect, realized that a lot of the anger and the frustration could have been all of that because she has.
Meanwhile, you're thinking she's just a Yoruba mother.
She's just a Yoruba mother, but she understood. She said, "Whoa, that could have just been what it was, right?" So don't feel like you need to suffer alone.
Okay.
Ask the right questions. And another thing is that you don't have to wait till you don't see your cycles anymore. Just because your cycles are still regular does not mean that changes are not happening. They are happening fully. So yeah, those will be the biggest advice that I will give to any woman.
No, that is great advice. And I hope you guys are listening and paying attention, because just like you said, there is absolutely no reason why we need to suffer in silence. I literally was making fun of my sister because when I started, I told her about HRT and I told her about how it's affecting me positively.
Yeah.
And she was like, well, I've been there already. I'm doing it. And literally within the last week, she had this come to Jesus moment where she was like, or actually she saw a clip on social media saying that menopause doesn't stop, so we need to stop talking about it in a way where, you go through menopause and that's it. It doesn't stop because your body, just like you've said, has made a permanent change, which is permanent. So post-menopause is also very real. So why go through that and suffer in silence when there is safe medication, safe remedies for this.
Yeah.
So yes. So thank you for that. So the next question is, what's the one thing every woman listening can do today to better navigate the season?
Oh yeah, be an advocate. Advocate for yourself. I can't say it enough. Even as a doctor, I had to advocate for myself, right? When I was my PCP, I love her dearly, but she didn't know. She wasn't trained. She didn't know. And it's funny because when I went to her a year later, I told her, what I was doing and how I was feeling, and I asked her. I said, "Are you going to get trained? Are you going to get?" And she was like, well, there's not enough time for that, but maybe I'll just send them to OBGY. But listen, OBGYs cannot take care of everyone, right? So every doctor really needs to be trained. Family physician, internist, everyone needs to know. As long as you're taking care of a woman, you need to know. So definitely advocate for yourself is the big thing. Make sure that lifestyle is so important. Lifestyle. It's the word itself, lifestyle medicine, is really evidence-based medical approach that prevents, treats, and reverse chronic lifestyle related diseases. So I always say, that's something that we all need to do, and we need to amplify it as we get older, because naturally in our 30s, and it's not just me saying it's the way the Lord has it, that we lose muscle.
Yes.
We lose muscle in our 30s. And then by the time we get perimenopause, it even triples. So 3 to 8% of lean muscle. And then the bone, I don't know if you knew, Monica, that in your 30s, that's our peak bone density.
Really?
And after that, it begins to break down. Guess what estrogen does? Estrogen balances how often it builds, how often it breaks, how often it builds. But then when estrogen is down, what do you think is happening? It doesn't build as quick as it breaks down, right? So pretty much you have to incorporate that lifestyle. If you know that you're not eating well, do your best to eat better. And it's just 1% better every day. I'm not saying go from 0 to 100, but eat more plant-based foods, because that's what your body needs, right?
Yeah.
Move more. Don't be a couch potato, because your joints are, motion is the lotion. So we just have to move more. Certainly when I was having the joint issues, I amplified my stretching, and that also helped. In addition to the HRTs, we got to sleep. And I love how you prioritize your sleep. You don't mess with sleep at all.
I really do. Dr. Babs knows.
I love it.
Sleep, me and sleep.
Yes.
And that was not always the case for me, but now
you understand the importance of sleep.
There's nothing
That's
better.
Good.
I will cancel every trip. I will miss any fashion week just to sleep.
Yeah, I love it. I love that you do that. That's something I love to sleep. I don't have a problem sleeping ever since, I've learned to, do things, but I feel like sometimes work and something can get a hold of me, but understanding that when you don't sleep, your body doesn't heal naturally, right? So all the things, sleep, stress management, movement, nutrition, those are things that we need to amplify and don't just ignore. And if you need help with that, just reach out. So those are the things I say.
What about strength training? That's something that I've started incorporating more.
Absolutely.
As I, having conversations with some of my friends who are just very fit.
Yeah.
And they did mention that your body starts to break down the muscle. So is that something you really advocate for as well?
Absolutely. Without a doubt. So part of the lean muscle that we lose, if we're not eating enough protein, people say it all why do we always talk about protein? Because it's the building block, right? So I'm glad that you brought that up. So not only whole plant-based food, even if you're not a vegetarian, just make sure you eat more fiber-rich foods because it's an anti-inflammatory. If the estrogen is already an anti-inflammatory, you don't have enough of that. So you really have to make sure you're eating more inflammatory foods. But in the same thing, strength training. As you get older, cardio, running, and all that thing is good for the heart. But what is better for the muscle is definitely the strength training. And the recommendation is anywhere between 30 minutes, 3 days a week, at least do that.
Okay.
Yeah, at a minimum, you can do more.
Okay.
But if we don't use it, we're going to lose it. And we don't want to lose it. And certainly the strength training helps with your testosterone naturally.
Okay.
It helps with just overall health and well-being. And then it helps to build your bones as well. So
Perfect.
all those things are important things to incorporate.
That makes me feel so good because I feel like I'm on the right track.
Yes.
I'm doing my, mobility and recovery more often now, and then incorporating at least 3 days of strength training, total body, upper body, and then lower body. When I did see you and we went over like my muscle mass, I was so shocked because I thought my legs were my strongest, part of my body, but it was more so my upper body.
Yeah.
So now even I'm so mindful of that. But that also goes into having a doctor who actually has the time and takes the time to check all of those things.
Yeah.
Because with my old doctor, that was never a conversation.
Yeah.
Not once.
And it needs to be because I go on the InBody as well because I love the data. So it's beyond looking at the number on the scale. It's not just the number on the scale, it's the body composition. So if we don't have enough lean muscle, then we have an action plan that would tailor towards how do we build lean muscle in the upper body, lower body. So that's why I have the InBody scan. And I love it because it just broke that love-hate relationship I had with the scale because now with the InBody, I specifically know what my visceral fat is. I know what my lean muscle, I know what inflammation is. So I love that you're a go-getter. You're like, let's do this. Let's improve on these numbers.
I am. I feel like your body is almost like a gift from God. This is where I get spiritual. So I'm like, you have to treat it well.
Yes.
I love food. I love all the things. But the older I get, I am more conscious of what I'm eating. I am more conscious of how I'm moving. I'm actually walking outside now, even when it's hot. It's really hot. So I haven't been doing that as much. But those are the things that I'm more aware of. And I'll push through a little bit of discomfort with the stretching and whatnot. And just even incorporating it into everyday practices. So I was telling you, as I'm putting lotion on my body, I'm doing hip stretches. And I'm, doing all these things to make sure that I continue to be lean and continue to have mobility throughout my entire body. So
and to your point too, that we can't do the same thing expecting different results. We really have to. And that's important. Other than just the HRTs, there are additional tools, but we need to set the foundation. And the foundation is all the things that you talked about, the stretching, the balance, because those we're going to lose that as we get older unless we train it. And so, we definitely need to incorporate all of that.
I love that. So does that mean all these women in their 60s and 70s that we see them, they're fit and they're, they look beautiful and their skin looks great. So that's really just lifestyle because most of them will say,
there you go.
My lifestyle is healthy. I work out a lot. I advocate for myself. So I think those are the perfect examples that we want to continue to follow.
Absolutely. And shout out to my aunt who turned 90. Oh my goodness, that lady, she was the oldest of all the sisters. And I went to medical school with her from Nigeria. I did the second half with her. But that lady, there was no day she wouldn't walk. And I asked her, I said, why do you do that? And I used to feel when you're older, you should just sit down. But she said she knows how she feels when she doesn't do it. And I mean, in her 90s. I think
that right there is the main thing. How do you feel when your body is not functioning correctly, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you feel? So even as we were talking about, the estrogen levels and paying attention and taking a mental journal of our bodies, I'm finding that, at least I feel there's a difference. Almost as if my fibroid is getting a little bit bigger, or I feel a bit more discomfort. And according to my phone, because I have it on my calendar, my period is around the corner. So, are those things that, is your body well, not even is, because you did answer the question.
Yeah.
So I think that just goes to speak to the idea that your body really changes
Yeah.
with the estrogen, the depletion, or your period coming and whatnot.
Yeah.
But being able to pay attention and being able to really understand your body and notice that something is off and not dismiss it, but pay attention. I think that would help so many women in the long run to really understand and to actually know how to advocate for themselves. Because the last doctor I had, when I, spoke about my fibroids, she said, oh, it's probably just bowel movement, right? So, but because I knew it wasn't just bowel movement, and because I started being more in tune with my body, I knew there was something wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just have to speak out and speak up and just keep paying attention, because they're answers. They're answers. And the more we're listened to, we feel validated, right? So that's really the biggest lesson here, that don't stop learning. I love women. We're just unique and just beautiful. And I don't want anyone to see menopause as a cause, right? Because of all the things, but just see it as an opportunity to feel empowered. It's the second half, but what can I do to support that journey and not feel collapsed and overwhelmed that there's no hope or there's no solution, or you have to keep struggling through it, right? Because at some point it will level out. But before that happens, what are you going to do? Are you just going to let it succumb and you just, break down completely? So that's where the strength training and the nutrition and all the other things. And of course, if it's absolutely affecting your quality of life, you know that there are options. Some of these things that we've already talked about, certainly. And ask the doctors if they don't bring it up. Because I've had some of my patients come and tell me that they brought it up to their primary care and they actually went to do some additional training. And because of them, they were, they're educated and they know the nuances. Yeah. So.
Wow. Okay. So last question.
Yeah.
What message would you like every woman to leave this conversation with?
Yes. Well, just listening to this is empowering alone. And I'm really proud of everyone for listening to this beautiful platform and coming back again, because I love that you're doing this. That your first 2 episodes I listened to, and I was so amazed about what you're doing. But I don't want women to feel shame. We feel a lot of shame, and we feel like we don't want to talk about it, right? Who wants to talk about their vagina being very dry? But it's in community. In community, we heal together. There's nothing to be ashamed about. It's a journey, right, that we're going through. So the takeaway is, listen to the rest of the following episodes, learn, build yourself, share with other women, and then just know that you're not broken. You are not broken, and you're not crazy.
That part.
Crazy. You're not crazy. There's a physiological explanation to this, but then we also need to know what the answers are. Lay it all out. I've had some patients where they're like, yeah, well, my mom had breast cancer. I don't think I can take HRTs. And I share with them, I'm like, okay, was the breast cancer estrogen positive? If it wasn't, we now know that breast cancer is caused by many other things other than estrogen, and it's very small percentage of people. So if that is not an option for you, what else is? Always like, what else? What are the other alternatives? Because they're non-hormonal options. So that's the takeaway. You're not broken. You're not crazy. It's all part of the physiology. So when you know better, you do better, and just feel empowered. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. That was amazing.
Yeah.
In case anyone wants, well, why wouldn't they, especially after listening to this, how can my audience find you? Not just online, of course, on your social media platforms, but also, where's your practice? Where are you available? Please share every which way they can find you and follow you and continue to learn about perimenopause, postmenopause, menopause, and everything in between.
I know. Well, thank you. I appreciate this time again. This has been lovely. This is one of my favorite topics. I've always loved just women's health. So thank you for the opportunity. So yeah, I am on Living at Your Finest Wellness on all social media platforms. And I love empowering women, equipping women. So I have a YouTube channel as well. So if you want to learn all the things, I have series on menopause there.
Excellent.
So it's Living at Your Finest menopause wellness. And then my practice is a holistic and integrative direct primary care practice.
Okay.
And that is on Johnson's Ferry Road, East Cobb area.
Here in Atlanta.
Yes, here in Atlanta. So I would love to connect with women. I am available. I just want to help women. So yeah, if you're interested in being a member, I do offer a complimentary meet and greet. I think I had one with you just to learn about what the practice entails, answer your questions, because it's different. You're not going to spend 7 minutes with me or 10 minutes. It's tailored towards my patients. So it's whole person care, it's personalized, and it's patient centered. So
it's extremely affordable.
Yeah, that part.
I think that's the part we tend to leave out because, you know, traditional medicine will leave you in bankruptcy.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Oh, yeah. That's what I love about the DPC model. Everything is cost effective.
Yes.
It's transparent, right? Like my daughter went for her pap smear. She turned 21. And the pap smear in my office is $23.
Wow.
Meanwhile, they sent us a bill of how much was it? $188. After the same pap smear that is $23, they sent a bill of $188. And she insisted she wanted to. I was like, I could send you to another DPC doctor because our price is so cost effective. We have, we have a negotiation with the labs to make it cost effective. But of course, when you add the middleman, the insurance, everything gets escalated. So definitely, I would love if anyone wants to learn more about the practice to send me an email on info@lifewellness.com.
And I will link everything in the description box on every platform. So yes, I'll make sure everything is linked so everyone can find you, inquire.
Thank you.
I just feel like this type of medicine really should be available to everyone. And as a Canadian, I don't understand why it's not available to everyone because, you know, I do think good health is a human necessity, just the same way the air we breathe, right? If we're going to pay taxes, our taxes should go back towards us, helping us, women included, and not just men's needs. You know, shout out to all my men who are being patient and who are listening. I know, because
thank goodness for them.
I think it's also important that we know how to have the conversations with men and the language for our partners to understand and not dismiss what we're going through. Yes.
And I will share a documentary with you so that you can include it for viewers and listeners to listen. Because I was invited as a guest to one of the menopause documentary, and it had men in there. So my husband joined me and he understood what I was going through. So I think it's important for the men. I'm glad that you shouted out to them.
Well, I'm going to have an episode with my husband, and, you know, just so we can actually talk about this through a male's perspective.
Yes, they definitely, they're putting up with a lot. So, but if they understand this transition, then they're more, they know how to meet the needs. So that made a big difference when my husband attended with me.
I agree, because I think that's also a really good way to avoid divorce rates, because how do you support a partner that is literally going ballistic on you? You know, when your reaction is to meet energy with energy. So instead of meeting that energy with energy, you're meeting that energy with understanding.
And you know what? I remember this sad story that the lady said, by the time she realized what was going on with her, she was already divorced. And
I had a DM like that too.
She was already, and it was so, I just broke my heart. It was like, she didn't know what she was going through, and she filed, and the guy was like, okay, I don't know what to do. But now she's on treatment, and she wished she had known that it might have saved her marriage. So
ladies, let's save our relationships. Let's first of all save our own lives first, and then we attend to everybody else. Dr. Babalola, thank you. This was such an amazing conversation. I am so happy you all got to experience Dr. Babs and just to listen to all the information out there. And there's so much more information. We will continue to have conversations like this. So make sure you're tuned in. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube or on Spotify or anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Thank you so much for listening to Permission to Speak about perimenopause. See you in the next episode.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. Thank you. Yay! This is good.